was going down for a dad's weekend over at Washington State to see my daughter, and my wife and my son came along with me. We were coming up on Ellensburg, and we see a large splash in the water. But as we got closer and we got up to where the splash was, I saw that there was a car in the water. I immediately threw my phone to my son in the back seat of the car and told him to call 911, and he did. And we got out and we ran over to where the car was, and it had landed in a pond. I was looking at the car and I could see a figure inside the car that wasn't moving. I immediately at that time jumped into the water. I was pounding on the glass of the window, trying to get some type of response from the person that was in the car. No response. And I was trying to open up the doors and stuff like that. Couldn't get the doors open. I kind of realized that I needed to get back to shore before I got too hypothermic, actually, when I was in the water.
I run down to the scene. I pick out one person in the crowd to talk to. Everybody's trying to talk to me at the same time. He was soaking wet, so I knew that he had already been in the water or he was the driver of the vehicle that was now out. I quickly learned that he wasn't the driver. He was a good Samaritan. Later learned that his name was Jim Kocker. He'd already swam out to the car once. I showed him the ASP and said, this is what we're going to use. And I also asked him if he'd be willing to come back out there with me. Knowing he'd already been out once, he kind of knew the situation, and without hesitation he said, of course. Once we got there, I noticed it had gone down even more. It was probably a foot of the rear window showing. We didn't have much time. The person was actually underwater, and for some reason they weren't able to help themselves. And somehow the driver's door just popped open. And even to this day, we don't know how that happened. Jim said he didn't pull on it because when he did, it was locked. So once we got Mr. Johnson some air, he still really wasn't coherent, but he was breathing. Mr. Kocker and I each took an arm and swam Mr. Johnson back to shore. We each had an arm, we swam him back. And so I went home, got a new uniform, and then I went back to the hospital to see how Mr. Johnson was doing.
Trooper Farmer showed up and explained what exactly had happened, and it was very strange to hear how things could have turned out differently and how close it was. Very thankful to Trooper Farmer and Mr. Kocker for what they did that day.
When it comes to this scenario where he saved somebody's lives, it doesn't surprise me a bit, just because that's who he is.
To me, that's a very selfless act of bravery, and if they had not been willing to enter the water that morning, Mr. Johnson would not be alive today. When
first asked about the situation, he said straight up, it's what we do. As troopers with the Washington State Patrol, it's what we do. For me, that is an excellent example of the Washington State Patrol's motto of service with humility. And for me, Jay is definitely deserving of this life-saving award.